Welcome back to Musicians Anonymous, and today's guest is a true master of the mix, Swiss mixing engineer Daniel Milert. He's worked with an incredible range of artists, including my latest guest, Sabuna. And with his really great ear and technical expertise, he's really the guy that brings your mix to life. So, hey Daniel, how you doing?
Hey, hi Dan. Thank you very much for all the compliments. I'm flattered already and already forgetting my text.
That was just the intro.
Yes, it's lovely to be here. Thank you very much.
What initially drew you to mixing as an audio engineer? I mean, yeah, you're already established as a mixing engineer, but why did you want to get into that in the first place?
Let's say I was, I was making music a long time in my life, but there was also a time when I wanted to become a designer, actually. So I was exploring creative endeavors for a long time. But I was always the one. I was always the one who was already perfecting an image, before actually starting sketching it out. I always was into kind of finishing touches, perfectioning things, or much more than actually, the creative idealizing. So it came quite naturally when my friends at high school started to make beats in FL Studio, and we started, to send each other beats. That at some point I started to get more into electronic music production. Started to kind of, like I'm a 100% or nothing guy. And I really want to just dive in directly into the whole world of sound design and all these possibilities, and soon I realized that I'm much more into arranging sounds around each other than into creating or composing in the first place. I'm more into finishing and perfecting. And then I got an internship at a studio that is nearby. It's called Pilgrim Studio, where where he is as well. He's a musician, but in the studio he's mostly engineer, right? And I really got into or saw how you work as an engineer. It wasn't a possibility in my head before, to be actually a mixing or a recording engineer. It just felt extremely natural to me to do this part of the job, and much more so than the other part of creating was actually more kind of a forced, way of doing it, because I always felt like I have to come up with something, but with mixing it was just totally natural. I know how it should. When I get it, I can read it. I can make it sound how it wants to sound by itself, kind of like. That approach.
Do you understand the needs of that specific track of before it's mixed, and you already have that image straight away in your brain, and therefore you're going right for that?
Sometimes with some mixes, and with other mixes it's more of a trying out until you actually find out where it wants to go. And of course there's arrangements that work better, there's arrangement that works that work a little bit worse. And you need to find solutions. But in general, it's the thing. I love to be in service of something, and I love to react to things much more than act, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get that. Also, I mean, by basically even what you said, you like perfecting stuff, right?
Yes.
There's so many things you can perfect in different genres, and you got to take a very different approach for different styles, different genres, even different artists. And if you've worked with a bunch of people, what's like something that you've learned from different styles and personalities in the studio?
Well, that's a broad question. I think one of let's do a little bit of a polarizing, polarizing statement. I think it's more important to be different than it is important to be good. For an artist. Because if you're different enough, your weird becomes the new good to people. But you need to really nail it down, and there it is very important for artists to have a very clear line and a clear concept on how they sound, and also what kind of energy they want to give to their audience. It actually doesn't matter which style or content they do. It's really more about how much they nail it down to a very specific thing that translates to the feelings of the listeners. What I learned from this is basically that I think that, you know, no matter what you do, if you nail it down 100%, you will find people that listen to it. And as a mixing engineer, it's important to read what makes you special, what makes this concept of yours special, and to kill everything that stands in the way of this, and to emphasize everything that defines it. That's it. Yeah.
Do you think the Swiss music scene as such like follows this this metric, or you're saying like the Swiss artists in general, are they trying to be different?
This is a very broad question, because there's a lot of bubbles in the Swiss music industry, and every, you know, people in every bubble are thinking and thinking and seeing the creative world a little bit different. So there is no such thing as one Swiss industry. I think that's the most important thing. There's smaller groups of people or bubbles that like define certain circles where they have a very specific things. But I think in general you can say that successful artists usually have a concept down, whether they know it or not. If you know what I mean.
Sometimes by accident.
Yeah.
It's just that much of a personality that people make it in, or perceive it as a persona, as an image.
Exactly. I think that's the crucial point. What you said, it needs to be perceivable as a polarizing, charismatic persona, and it can take any form. You know, you can be the depressed teenager trying to figure out who he is in the world, you know, or you can be like the anti-government, you know, rebel that just defies all the rules, basically, and everything. If you do it like strong enough, and if you bring these things on point to your audience, it will resonate. But if you do, and this is probably like a thing that you still see in mostly older Swiss music, or a lot of Swiss music still, I think, though the younger generation is actually breaking out from it a little bit. But you see like this very neutral Swiss, how do I say, this very neutral Swiss mindset, you know. We are neutral. We don't offend anyone. We don't provoke, you know. It's like everything is kind of smooth, has no edges, and I think that's actually a thing. Art needs to have edges. Art needs to provoke to actually have an impact, an emotional impact.
No, definitely, yeah.
It's like with acting, for example. You have to, if you want to bring a feeling across on screen, you have to overact. You have to act much more than you would in nature, right? So
there's 100%.
There's also a thing about overacting in a mix. It's about overacting in your lyrics. It's about overacting in everything you do, and really kind of push the buttons, you know.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a very you say insightful thing, because like you say, overacting as such, some people think like, oh, it's overdoing it. It's just over the top. But it's not, it's conveying that emotion, because not everybody can feel that emotion.
Yes.
So you really have to make sure that the people feel that.
Yeah, that I think
it's the same when you...
Yeah, continue. It's the same when you...
It's the same when you grab a mix. You know, you got to feel like, okay, what am I going to do with this? What emotion am I going to see? I do also, like you, when you do a mix, do you have a specific, you know, philosophy you follow, or do you just go like, okay, this is the mood, I'm going for that?
No, I have certain things. I'm actually, I just quickly go to my notes, because I actually made some notes on this question. I have certain things that are very important, and it's different layers of, or different levels of thinking about this. So the most important thing is to very early see what defines the artist musically. Right, or sonically, what makes the artist be the artist? Because ideally, I don't, as a mixing engineer, I don't always have control over how the arrangement was composed, for example. So I'm kind of stuck with what people already deliver for some part. Of course, when I record a band, so meaning when I produce a band, which I do for bands, then it's different, because I can tackle this before we start the recording, which should ideally be the case with any producer, that he actually thinks about these things before he starts production. But it's really what defines the artist, what makes him unique, stand out, and then you just emphasize this and you kill the rest. Also, for mixing, for me, it's very important on the musical side to get the dramaturgy right. It's like the non-neutral way of doing mixes. If the mix wants to jump, it should actually jump. You emphasize that jump. If it should break down, you make it completely break down, not just kind of a little bit. If it wants to open up, you make it narrow first, so it opens up. If it wants to be,
so it feels like it goes even further.
Yes, and if you kind of if it should be smooth and silky, then you make it extra smooth and silky, kind of like this. It's also when you have contrast. I think in mixes, contrast, or generally in music, contrast is very important, also in storytelling. So if I see things that contrast each other, I try to emphasize the contrast. Especially if you have like super loud, busy section and you go into a super quiet section, it should actually go from super loud to super quiet, because no one wants to hear boring music, right?
Definitely.
And of course, sometimes you have to even encourage artists a little bit of, there's such a high jump in volume. Yes, that's good, because it catches the attention of people's ears, And of course, there's a thing about quality. And an artist always has kind of an ecosystem in which he exists. So, for example, if you have a singer-songwriter making chill pop, he will probably be... Ideally, he would be played on lists with, Taylor Swift, Holly Humberstone, Sasha Sloan, for example. Or if you do like metal, you will be played. Let's say you do like very modern sort of metal, you will be played on the same list as Bring Me the Horizon, And you have to I think you have to always give people like 60 to 70% of familiarity. So I kind of fit into the large ecosystem of your music, but make it 30 to 40% different and new and innovative, so that you actually stand out enough above all the other music that is there as well. And it's a very thin line of, and that's a lot of also technical questions, kind of frequency response, dynamics, how sounds feel, how the general texture feels. It's a thing about taste, to put this in the right place, so you're actually familiar enough to people who already like this kind of music to jump on, but different enough to actually shock them and give them something interesting.
And to be remembered by, it's not just one of the masses.
Yes. And also what is for me personally very important, I feel like a lot of the emotion in the mix comes from the actual design of space in a mix. Yesterday I had a lesson where I needed to teach reverb placement, for example, to a student, and I just realized again how, because we had an arrangement that was actually pretty good already, but I felt like something's lacking, and we just added reverbs that you didn't even hear. You didn't even know they were there, but they just placed like certain sounds more in the front, some they pushed a little bit to the back, and suddenly the whole emotion was there. And
so you're not basically putting it in like a massive space, you're not putting the voice, let's say, in a cathedral, right? You're just making it sound real and like lively, palpable, so you can grasp it, right?
But
in the space.
Most often with this work, you don't even hear that something's going on regarding, you don't hear this big cathedral. It just feels like you are standing in the same room with all these elements, and that makes you part of this world. I think it's immersiveness, you have to kind of, you have to be in this world, if you know what I mean.
You have to be in the same world as the music.
Yes. And of course, what is very important to me as well is easy listening. So, and this is something, your ear, as the listener, your ear can only focus on one thing at a time unless it knows it already, and that's where I think a lot of that's a trap for a lot of producers and mixers as well. Especially if you're self-producing or self-mixing, because you know the song, you wrote it, you heard it like 1,000 times. You know that there is a small detail, like up on the far right side, happening at the same time as the drummer is doing a drum fill, happening at the same time as the singer is saying something. But in a mix, you have to kind of decide which one is in focus and which one goes back. And this can be sometimes super short, so I spend a lot of time to actually, direct the attention. It should never feel like you need to use your brain capacity to listen, It should be, for something to be catchy, it should be enjoyable, it should just, you sit back and your attention automatically goes there, because I lifted the element for a short moment, just a little bit up, push the other one back, and then maybe even change back again pretty quickly. But even if the mix is super busy and there's a lot of a shit ton of stuff going on at the same time, it should always be a pleasure and not an intellectual exercise, unless you're actually doing exactly that music that should be an intellectual exercise. Then you should do it the other way around, of course.
Yeah.
So that's
people don't realize that in general, listeners, that basically everything is there. Everything is always there, unless it's not. And they got to realize what's important as a mixing engineer. Also, when producers or artists send you stuff, are there any mistakes that they make in preparation with this? Do they maybe try and already incorporate all this in the dry stems? I know that's an issue that smaller artists do sometimes, smaller producers. Does it happen with a lot of people?
Yeah, I think in general there's some things that happen quite a lot of times with people that are new to the whole process, or that are new to production, that usually, not always, sometimes even experienced people come with the same things. But I think in general, it's a thing about inexperience. And it comes definitely, most often mistakes are when the material that they deliver to the mix actually doesn't match what they are imagining in their head. And this of course gets worse if they're not able to communicate. But it usually comes together, if they would be able to communicate it, usually the arrangement's already also good enough, you know what I mean, because they kind of process it consciously, but in general, what should I say, most often, when they kind of for example, it's an extreme case, it can be in the details as well, but for example, if you imagine to sound like the mix to sound like an Imagine Dragons production, but you bring a recording of a few claps as snares, and because that they use clap samples, of course, in Imagine Dragons, but just the overall arrangement doesn't even have the material that it needs, so it can become something that sounds like Imagine Dragons. And of course, if I get this material and I need to get the best out of this, it will be different than what the artist expects in their head. And I think that's where often things get a bit more difficult, because you always try to make the best of what somebody's bringing you. At the same time, you also want to make them happy with their vision, right? But that's where you need to start communicating and actually show, kind of, teaching them to get
how to communicate that thought.
Yes, and also how to arrange the tracks, which actually is not part of what a mixing engineer usually does, but you need to do it so they also understand what's going on, right? And as well, it comes to at the same time, it's the same with, for example, recordings that are not up to par yet. Sometimes you have mistakes, or you hear bad edits, or especially what I get a lot are rhythmic is things that are rhythmically not precise enough, which is most often these things happen when producers are bringing in too dull mixes, like when you have when they kind of super warm and don't have the brightness that the end product would need to even stand out, you know, because the low frequencies mask the details in the high frequencies, and then once I start to bring these details up because I have to, you hear a lot of shit, you know, and then all that shit comes
up. The
up
transients on the snare are like, it's a quarter ahead.
yes, and this is usually where, you know, like where it's difficult usually, and it's also about most often the people don't have the listening systems to hear it at that moment, you know, that there's a reason why they don't hear it usually, and navigating this, I think, is usually very time consuming, and also you know, it's also emotional work for me and for the producer or the artist as well, because there's a lot of personal development that happens in that moment, a lot of self-doubts, of course, as well, that need to be addressed. And there's a small thing that happens usually with hip-hop guys, mostly, not so much with other guys. Don't want to step on anybody's feet, but that's just tendencies. Like the people often confuse mixing with mastering or mixing with editing. Like, you know, they expect the mixing engineer to tune their vocals as part of the mix, which is not the case. By the time you go into mixing, there should be no edits that should need to be done, right? So yeah, of course I can do it, but it's not part of the mixing. This is also something that happens quite a lot, I think.
And then you have to think, is this project for me personally worth it to do all that? Or do I just say, like, just fix it and then come back to me?
Yeah,
that's always a thought. Yeah.
Usually it's not that easy, because usually most of these people are on a self-imposed deadline. So, you know, it's like, the mix needs to be done like in 3 days, you know, and you're like, okay, but this is, you know, the material is not good enough, and then you just kind of, okay, but I still somehow need to fix it in 3 days, right? So it's faster to actually just quickly do it by myself. Of course, it's you know, it's not the way how it should work, but sometimes you just, you know, you make things work. That's also why people trust you at some point, and you have to communicate, of course, that you had more work than expected. Yes.
Also, like with the communication specifically, do you prefer if the artist like communicates better the vision that they want from the mix, or do you just like to like experiment and go like completely free?
No, 100% for the vision. Because it's also lovely if they want to experiment, you know, they want to see my approach to things, of course. But first of all, that makes me already almost a producer of the track, because that's production decision. You know, kind of where to put the band sonically. And it goes a lot into the branding of the musician. You know, you have
and the overall sound of the artist.
Ideally, you would not have this question, or you would have this question sorted out before you even start writing the songs. You know, because you need to be, as an artist, you need to be clear about how you want to sound. Of course, there should be room for experimenting as well. Of course, but again, this is something that should not be decided at the time where the track is already produced. It should be decided earlier. And also, a lot of people that say, oh, I'm open to make whatever you want, I want to see it, are usually that they actually not that open to it. They just say, because they don't know how to say it differently, and often this is usually the projects where you end up with, we imagined it to sound different. Yes, you told me to do whatever I want, you know. Of course, no. That's why I always tell people, no, think about what you want. And we can often, it's super nice to just get the artist, you know, into the studio, and we listen to music. And they tell me,
what do you like?
Yes, they tell me what they like and what they don't like, and then I get usually a pretty clear, even when they think I should be open to, I should do my own thing. I'm much more precise on what they actually like and how they want to sound, and I would always prefer this situation, because you can make a good mix in 20 ways, but only one way is the right one for the artist.
Well, when you worked with Sabina and myself actually on one of our songs, we had quite a specific vision, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For that, how did you find the experience of working with us?
It was amazing. First of all, you have incredible artistry in both of you, and I also think that both of you actually know pretty well who you are, which is amazing in general. It's the nicest thing when you finish a mix is to actually know that you kind of portrayed the artists in the best possible way, but also in their very unique way. You had definitely a lot of characters. I remember that the arrangement in the mix was quite tricky, also to really nail the kind of the vision down. There were some things that were kind of tricky, but it also added to this kind of character, especially I love this kind of authenticity that comes with the production due to actually these tricky things.
Yeah, but
Because
also even on my side for recording it, there was a lot of workarounds because I didn't have a studio at that time.
Yes.
I was literally recording it in my bedroom.
But that kind of makes the essence of the song, right?
Yeah. Oh, it did. I think it worked out like really well.
Yes.
Like we are both really happy with that.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Amazing.
I'm super happy, and I'm also very happy to work with you, both of you.
Yeah, definitely. That goes both ways.
Yeah.
Have you, for example, had a situation where your vision clashed with the artist? Like it didn't work. Like for example, this relationship worked. Have you had it where it clashed? You had technical expertise and you knew what needs to be done, but the artist wanted something completely off the table.
Yeah,
and just
very often actually.
Really?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Again, it happens mostly when people don't know exactly what they want yet, but they actually know. They just don't know that they know. They kind of don't know that they have a very specific way they want it to sound, because to them it sounds. It's like, when you should describe what makes you special, you will for sure not say the same as another person, because for sure, for you, certain things, like if you, for example, you're a person that always does this, there are people that always do this with their hair, for you that's normal. It's nothing special. But for everyone outside, this is what makes you you. And that's the problem as well with musical taste, for you, especially in the beginning with inexperienced artists or producers, for them it's natural that it should sound like this. They don't think about that they have to communicate it, you know what I mean? Or to show it. So what you kind of have to do is you have to, if you feel like they are not on that point yet, you need to go to take them kind of into the studio and say, hey, look, what I said before, listen to music with me, tell me what you like, what you don't like, this mix, how you like the drums, this mix, how you like the drums, or this one, why are these drums better in that mix, kind of to understand how the brain works, because they will not think about it when unless they already had bad experiences, then they learned. You know what I mean? So it happens all the time. It's part of the job. It's kind of, as a mixing engineer, you need to kind of, and also of course you need to make your good and bad experiences, learn from them, learn how to communicate proactively in advance, so you get the information you need to actually do the job in a way the client or the artist expects, right? Yes.
100%. Well, that's there's obviously a lot of challenges with that. I would say in the community,
especially because there is no unified language for sound. Every word we use for sound has actually comes from another sense that we use, except loud and quiet. Loud and quiet are the only adjectives that are really based on how we hear things. Like warm and bright is a tactile thing.
Yeah, it means right? Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
Yes, harsh is also a feeling you have on your skin, right? When something's some surface is harsh and you feel it. So it doesn't really describe sound. We just use these words to kind of describe how a sound makes us feel. And the first thing you need to do is to actually get on the same language with an artist, because and also talking about music is really bad. Because I had, like people that say, "Oh, I want the voice warmer," and in like 90% of the cases, it means that they want less high end, a little bit more low mids, But in his case, it was the exact opposite. He wanted it brighter because it felt more close to him, and therefore he felt warmer, like more intimate.
That I've never thought of warmer like that.
Yes.
And 99% of the time, even when I work with artists and we're working on a mix, and they're like, "Oh, can you make my voice warmer? It's really, really sharp and cold." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Obviously, they mean this on the EQ curve,
Yes. Yeah, but
this, like going down.
Yeah.
My image is mirrored.
It's nice how you mirror it for the audience. But that's exactly it. You have to kind of you have to start speaking the same language, and this needs time, of course. And it's usually it works with time better than in the beginning. So you also need time to get to know an artist, to kind of go a little bit forth and back. It's also true that usually with artists, like the first 2 or 3 songs you do, you have usually a lot more revisions than when you already on the 5th song and you know exactly what the artist likes, but he also knows how he should deliver things to you because he got your feedback as well, so he gets what he expects. It's a two-way. It's a two-way relationship.
Definitely. It's a journey for both the artist and the producer and the mixing engineer.
Yes.
But it's also like in the industry as a whole. If you work with people spreading out and working with different people in different parts of the industry, there's also always relationships going back and forth, which are all individual if you think about that.
Yes.
But I don't know, what do you think the biggest challenges for mixing engineers in today's music industry are in general? Obviously that's a really, really big question as well.
So I think the biggest problem is the do-it-yourself culture in general, let's not say problem, let's just say challenge. Because it's also nice. It means that a lot of people nowadays can do music by themselves without needing to rent super expensive studio spaces with tape machines, because it's the only studio around that has a 24-inch tape machine, and maybe the engineer is not even that good, he just has a tape machine,
That's also true. It's just a collector basically.
Yes. So but also it means that there's a lot less actual know-how around and a lot more pseudo know-how. I mean, just if I listen to YouTube videos about mixing, I'm just like, don't listen to this, please. It just completely doesn't work that way, or it works in exactly one case of 100. And people take it as rules. It's the same as if you go to a nutritionist, there's like 20 different diets that should be healthy for you, and every diet is based on another metabolism kind of.
Exactly.
You get the point. So
anything that's on YouTube and into videos like this is basically entertainment.
Yes.
And also, one of my tutors at uni, I can't remember who it was, said, we were talking about this specifically, and he said that if they're making YouTube videos talking about the mix, they're obviously not a good mixing engineer because they're not making money off it, so they're trying to make money off YouTube.
Yeah, kind of. That I think
sometimes it's the case, not all the time.
Yeah, some of them are good. Some of them are actually good, but again, it's also the culture that, in general, it's the way people consume things on YouTube that makes it actually, it forces you to give them quick solutions for small problems without general context, because that's what people click on. If you do like the super amazing course on YouTube that goes 10 hours and actually explains you why you do things and why you should not do things, in which cases, nobody will click on it. You will have two views, you know. You have to, if you go on these platforms, and now with Instagram, TikTok, it's even more extreme with the shorts as well. You know, like you have to why your low end sucks, you know, and then you have this one specific situation and people click on it because they search for why does my low end suck, you know. And that's not where you actually get expertise. That's just kind of the lottery. If you're lucky, you get the right solution. If you're not so lucky, you know what I mean. So going back to the challenges for mixing engineers, it's first of all where to get know-how if you're starting out, because of this reason, and getting actual know-how. I mean, there's a lot of people, for example, I think that call themselves, for example, mixing engineers, but there's not that many people who actually really cognitively understand what they're doing. Maybe they are good in one genre because they feel how it should sound, you know, they kind of intuitively go into it, but if you throw different genres at them, they cannot translate it because they don't understand the physics and mixing is really engineering. I think that's very important. It is engineering. It's making things work. It's problem solving. It's getting huge interdependent systems to work with each other. It's a very functional way of thinking you need, and it's a very analytical way of doing things. And you have to kind of close the gap to the emotional side of things. So you kind of have to work with a good clear and analytic brain, but still keep the heart connection to the art, and that's another thing that is very difficult. But in general, like the do-it-yourself culture, it also means other things. You know, like for example, yes, it's difficult that, you know, you often get then you know, like productions that are not on the ideal level they should be, because just in general there is no hotspot of know-how anymore, you know, like know-how is kind of scattered around the country and everybody knows a little bit but not everything, so you don't have kind of, you know, these specialists, because everyone's kind of trying to do everything by himself, and he does everything kind of okay, you know, but it would be much, of course, but it's always with big artists as well. You go for every step, you go to the one person that does only one thing and does it really, really good. And of course, if you get projects that are, you know, that are not done like this, it's usually you have to fight more problems in the mix compared to actually making things better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it's also more difficult then to get high quality portfolio work early in your career. And also, of course, the fact that people do a lot of do-it-yourself nowadays also means that you often end up doing work that is not your work, especially consultation. For example, I'm as a producer or engineer, I often get asked about promotion or about how to release a song. This is not my job, you know. It's I can give you, of course, and I will give you whatever I can in this, you know, in this sphere. And I'm actually I'm working right now on doing like some small mini courses, because I have to answer the same questions like 1,000 times to everyone, and I want to make it once and then give them, you know, like. Instead of, you know, it's usually you have a lot of time where you just spend 20, 30, 40 hours with an artist on the phone, consulting him, and you know, that's it's work time, but it's not paid in the end, you know. That's
because you're just basically helping them navigate that situation they're in.
But of course,
as a mixing engineer, not your job.
Yeah, but of course you want, you know, because you want to see them succeed, you want to help, you know, just from a personal point. And I think it's a difficult thing to balance nowadays, and it also, of course, the higher level your clients become, the less you have this problem. But it's the do-it-yourself culture, especially in the lower segments of art it's I don't want to say lower segments, but just like like the ones that aren't really established yet, where you have these problems quite a lot, because at some point everyone realizes that to do everything alone is just impossible by physics, not even by ability. They might be able to do all of the stuff really good by themselves, but you don't have the time. No,
also, it takes time. Yeah, if you need to compose, songwrite, record, engineer, produce, mix, remix, and master, and also release and help the artist
and cut your own video as well.
Cut your own video and
design your cover. Do the radio promotion. Do the
Everything.
Spotify's playlist promotion. That's crazy.
That's your whole life based on one project.
Yeah. And then you work a 100% job at the side. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need a team, right? In the beginning, it's good to learn how things work, so nobody can talk you into shit, of course, and
definitely
steal your money. But at some point, you need to let go. And I think that's the thing. Of course, another thing is shrinking budgets in general. But again, this ties to several factors. But just to see, like in the 90s in Switzerland, even medium bands would get an advance from the record label for over 150,000 francs sometimes for producing an album, and now we are talking about 20,000 is actually,
and everything is even more expensive these days, so that makes absolutely no sense.
Yes. So that's for sure something that is kind of a challenge, but again, I think there's solutions to everything, especially good work. And but also I think what's especially for mixing engineers, what's more difficult is that your the time until you recognized is slower because than for an artist or a producer, because you have to think like this. People measure you on your portfolio. And you, in the beginning, you will start working with artists. You help to build them up, to build your portfolio as well. So first of all, they need to get successful. Then their producers need to get successful, and at the end, you will be the one. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you have to wait kind of longer until you're kind of establish yourself as a mixing engineer, just because you're later in the chain of production. Of course, as a mastering engineer, it's even
later.
Yeah.
And that's what we also have nowadays. There's a few mastering engineers and a few mixing. There's a lot of producers in the world, a lot of producers and a lot of really good producers. There's a bunch of mixing engineers, but not as much as the producers. And there's a few mastering engineers that just do everything because they are the best ones, and nobody has established themselves with a name like that specifically. And also today, I don't know if it really affects it personally. Maybe you would have a better opinion on that. But today everybody tries to, like you said, the DIY stuff, they try to help make something good, especially using AI all the time today, which for me personally just seems really like out of the box weird. But do you think that maybe, because it's a big topic now, will AI somehow influence or impact your work as a mixing engineer?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
for songwriting, people use it all the time now. I know people that are just like, oh, do you write your songs? Yeah, I songwrite. No, they use ChatGPT. Yeah, as a mixing engineer, will it impact you?
Yeah, definitely. For sure. But I think not in the way that people expect.
Yeah. That's the key. That's really important.
It will for sure help make some processes faster. For example, by giving suggestions. For example, especially when it comes to unmasking frequency ranges in a mix, it can work. Like the problem is this: it can give you quite good. Quite good ideas of how you could do it, but it never makes it perfectly. So suggestions, right? It's good for suggestions.
Yes, suggestions.
It's also good, for example, when the common problem as a mixing engineer, you mix more than 8 hours a day. Normally, the last 2 hours, you are not that fresh with your ears anymore. It just helps you kind of stay in perspective. a little bit, for longer periods of working. Of course, it will help to actually adjust to the smaller budgets, because we will be faster when I have a price on a mix and I can do it faster. I get more pay per hour in the end. So it will for sure kind of some things it will do, but it's the same as with Beat Detective, on Pro Tools. This one. We have it since 15 years already, or 10 years. I don't know. It's quite a long time.
It's quite an old teacher.
And it's still not accurate enough. I still, if I do it correctly, I still have to go through every single of these transient detections, and I can tell you that probably 10% of them are actually accurate. So what I'm trying to say is you still have to look over what it's doing, and you still will have to have the work, and you will be a little bit faster, but not that much, just and that's why I put a question mark on the quality thing. So you will still need to have a person who actually decides whether what the AI is doing is good or not. But there will be genres where it will be less. It will have less of an impact. For example, I think especially if we go about trap music. But again, you see it already, because in trap music, for example, it's there's from the engineering side, there's less that you can do wrong. Because the genre in itself is pretty easy when it comes to arrangements, very simplistic, and it's also okay if things sound a little bit off. It's way different. For example, it's even part of the culture, right? That some things shouldn't be perfect, and and there's also one way kind of that work, one way to mix them. You can learn it once and you can kind of apply to almost all the tracks, because the arrangements are always the same. You have these, like a specific 808s bass, specific snare sounds, specific hi-hat sounds, then you have the vocals in the center, and you have some kind of pad-ish melody, harmony, something somewhere in the background, right? It's a very simplistic arrangement, and you can kind of solve these arrangement or kind of mix them in repetitive ways. I think there it will, the suggestions might be much more readily usable already. But if you do like a rock mix, for example, or even a folk band, or like a pop, like a pop, like Imagine Dragon-ish, or even like if you go more into played music where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of dynamics,
it's not going to finish it to the extent where it's actually usable.
Yes, the more unexpected variables you have in a genre, the less it will work. Kind of like this, and you still need a person. It will help. It will make things faster, but you need a person to actually look over it. And also, AI does nothing new. This is very important. We have everything that AI is doing now. We already had in some form. Otherwise, I can tell you some examples. Like, for example, we had Ozone, isotope Ozone, for mastering things. And basically, what AI is doing now with suggestions in mixing is what Isotope did with Ozone and Neutron since years. They just didn't call it AI. At that time,
because today is a popular term, people call it AI.
Yes, now they call it AI, and it's wow. And again, the ideation that we had that we have now, for example, with all these plugins that generate you melodies or music or give you ideas. Let me ask you a question: is the whole the whole ecosystem that was built in the hip-hop industry around sample producers, loop makers, beat producers, like sample producers that just produce samples, give it to loop makers that just make loops out of it, and then the beat maker who just kind of takes loops, as idealizing. Is it so much different than just putting a bunch of ideas into Suno AI, listening to them and get inspired by it? No, it's exactly the same, right?
No, it's just the inspiration process, which is fine.
Exactly. So we had this already since 15 years for sure, Now
we just got rid of like 3 people in the process. That's it.
Yeah, kind of.
You just like skipped a few people.
Yeah,
I think the important factor about it is basically that it's not going to replace. you as a person that has personal perspective and experience and knowledge that you put into the mix, and also feeling. AI has no feeling, obviously. Let's hope it stays that way for a long time. But it can help you as a tool.
Yeah.
Which is, it can analyze, like you say, it can just like help you analyze frequencies. You can change the sonic space with it. It gives you ideas which you can then get inspired of.
Yes.
Which is like, yeah.
I think AI is you at best as it's best to see it as a co-worker, as a collaborator,
not an enemy. Yeah.
Yes, because also it gives you new perspectives and it lets you question your own blind spots in a very efficient way sometimes, not always. But also important is you need to train AI so it actually becomes useful.
So it actually becomes your helper and doesn't just give you random things that have nothing to do with you.
Yes, exactly. But again, I think people will always buy from people. Like they will connect, they will emotionally connect with humans, even if we would be at a point where like most of the production happens in some artificial intelligence, and I would say there's still 15 to 20 years to go until then, for sure. Even more maybe. But like there still needs to be a person that curates the cultural aspect of it, because you people want to identify with something, so you have to give them something that they identify with, and they will not identify with a machine unless maybe one that is a hype, like right now, because it's a hype, people will especially in the Asian countries, people listen to some AI artists.
Yeah, they actually do, which is crazy.
Yeah.
To me, that's absolutely bonkers. I do not.
And it's amazing. I mean,
why? It's cool that it can make it, but why would you listen to something that's just completely made up from tiny little bits of everything that has already existed, and it's just not. There's no soul in it.
Yeah, no. There is actually soul in it, I think. But I can explain. I think if you look at successful artists, you realize pretty quickly that when it comes to different ecosystems of music, you always have, for every archetype of character, you have one artist that is successful. Like, for example, like Bon Jovi was the guy who was fighting for having his life his way, and nobody talking into it. And it's like 50% of his songs is about this. You had Pink, that was the strong woman. You had actually at the same time, short before, you had in Germany a so-called La Fée. That was kind of the same character, but it worked in a German market because Pink was not German, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
And the same is, for example, I would say for Eminem, who was in the beginning he was not always the gangster rapper. At the beginning, he was the guy who made the most provoking videos and actually had a quite, quite extreme form of humor, but it was humor. And then you had Sido in Germany doing the same thing at the same time with the crazy videos and the Arschwig song and all these things. But again, there was no second Sido in Germany, and there was also no second Eminem in like the global US music economy,
music economy scene, owned by America.
Yes. So it's the same with AI. I think there's place for one AI artist.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't think that actually makes some sense, honestly.
because people will want to identify maybe with the technological advancement. They want this is also a projection sphere where you can put your thoughts, hopes, and anything into it. So I see it not as soulless. Actually, it's part of culture, and it's. When it comes to the discussion about AI, it's important to understand culture and why people do listen to someone. Why is there only one Avril Lavigne? At the same time, there will be a new one when Avril Lavigne is gone. But there's only just place for one from a certain type at a certain time. Yeah,
that's the thing. As you say, you can't overlap these things. Well, yeah, that's a lot of insight to something that I actually didn't think about that much. That also to the listeners were the same.
I hope so. will deliver some
going to
inspiration.
Sorry?
I hope it will give some inspiration, of course.
Yeah, definitely. If you feel inspired by the AI talk, drop a comment below. Yeah, let's get to the question of the show. We sort of like started it right at the beginning. It was how you got into music. But why are you in music? Why do you love what you do? Why do you love music?
That's a really, really tough question.
You personally, just that.
I think it's really just, this is a question I cannot answer you in a rational, analytical way, in a logical way, because it's, for me, it's more something spiritual. Just from, like, there's things, there's I'm a very analytical person, but I live my life based on a very spiritual feeling. And there is a point usually where you know that something is right. You cannot explain why. You cannot really pin it down in any way. You just know this is the thing. This is the thing I was maybe born to. I don't know. Maybe this is, kind of naive way of thinking, but it's how it feels. It's like I cannot imagine doing anything else. It's just when I imagine doing something else, it feels absolutely wrong and not me, Yeah. And it also feels like betraying the world, kind of, or myself, or just my reality. And I will never question this. I will just follow my inner voice on this. And right now, my inner voice says that I am a mixing engineer, and it says this since a long time and pretty clearly. And there's, sometimes things are falling into place without me having any control over it. And as soon as I start to kind of try controlling it too much, everything starts falling apart, and I have to kind of, go back and say, okay, it's not me that has the control over things. Kind of ish.
That's a really, really nice way of putting it. You said, like, it's just, you can't imagine yourself doing anything else and it would feel wrong. That's how you know that you're really, like you say, born to do what you are doing.
But again, it's not something I control. If life decides that it should be different tomorrow, it's not something I can control. Kind of. That's the spiritual.
And there's so many factors in every single person's life that can just change like this, and you can't influence that.
Yes. Yeah. But right now it feels like a gift. It really feels like that I got the chance to do it, and I'm happy to do it. It feels like I'm kind of having my place in the world. Let's say.
That's awesome.
Like this.
That's really nice. That's awesome, actually. All right. Yeah. Thanks for coming on to the show. Thanks for joining me here.
Thank you very much. It was an amazing interview.
Where can people find you if they want to work with you or collaborate with you in the future?
They can find me on my website, milertsounds.studio, or on Instagram, and you can really just DM me even if you have questions or anything. I'm pretty open. I try to answer all the DMs, and you can write me a mail on my mail, daniel@milertsounds.studio. When you need something, just hit me up.
Great, perfect. I will attach all those links in the comment section underneath, so you can make sure that you can contact Daniel as well. One more final thank you for being here today. It's a great addition to the show. You're a really great guest. And
thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope to chat again soon. Hey. Thank you guys for watching. This was Daniel Milert, and see you in episode 6.